Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Up there in strange brew land, that is, 2 + 2 equals racism.
Now, how do we work that math? Is this
2 + 2 no
Common
longer
Core?
2 + 2 no longer equals 4, according to the August Ontario Mathematics Coordinators Association.
What? Okay.
Ontario math teachers.
All right.
2 + 2 no longer equals 4. Because the equation is a white supremacist dog whistle. It is not a basic mathematical truth. Let me explain to you the covert white supremacy of traditional math. It includes things like a racial hierarchy in mathematics. I don't know what that means. Dismissing alternative algorithms. Phrases like just stick to math. Phrases like I don't see color in my math class. Eurocentric math curriculum, like, Pythagorean. Standardized testing. And, of course, math is neutral because 2 + 2 equals 4. You see, math is not subject to the identitarian zeitgeist of the day because they're just simple truths and demonstrable proofs. But if you say math is neutral because 2 + 2 equals 4, that's a dog whistle. You might as well just burn a cross in your math class. That's where we're at in pre-K to post-secondary education in the West. It's going very well. For more on this, pleased to be joined by Peter Wood, president of the National Association of Scholars. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me back.
I mean, I can't say this is necessarily new. I know that there has been a reexamination of math and its covert white supremacist foundation in places like Seattle as well. I mean, the big cities in America are no different than big cities in Canada, and that's not a compliment when it comes to the politics that has infected the classroom. But I mean, your reactions, as we talked to Scott Walker yesterday, who's now at Young America's Foundation, as you know, and part about the Stanford law embarrassment, but I mean, it just keeps getting worse and worse. So when do we hit bottom and figure out if we can rise once again?
Well, there's a question if there is a bottom, since the purpose of most of this nonsense, like 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, is to draw attention, to sort of have a tantrum and declare that something that is absurd has to be real, and then see if you can force it on people. So if we want to ensure that generations of children, whether they're Canadian or American, remain dead ignorant and incapable of advancing anywhere, we teach this stuff in the classes. And there are some teachers who behave that way, but most of it is just a kind of a grab for public attention by absurding things that are absurd, absurding them. That's a good verb for it.
Yeah, absurding them. Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, so the Future View column in the Wall Street Journal today, which is always very good, gets the attitudes of college students and postgraduate students about various issues. And this topic today is liberal arts and the humanities, which we know has been on the decline ever since Shakespeare was declared just an old white supremacist. But this young man, Thomas Gilmore from Ave Maria, well, he said Ave Maria, but the beauty of the liberal arts lies in the acknowledgement that intellectual pursuits bear fruit in far more ways than financial payoff. Today's society has lost sight of this, and as a result, my generation suffers from the pressure to find a degree that will lead directly to a job, while avoiding anything that resembles a classroom or a library. We need to revive the idea that education is a lifelong pursuit. The liberal arts should not be squashed by the monotony of servile work and office life, but rather they can be the gateway to joyful and meaningful lives in the restless and in this restless and despairing society. Well, that's an oppressive riff by Mr. Gilmore, but I just wonder, are there enough Mr. Gilmores matriculating in colleges and universities around the country? I know we're nowhere near sort of very few institutions, maybe with the exception of one he goes to, Ave Maria, that reflect his attitude about the liberal arts and the humanities. But can you continue to have people like him, a small minority, go through these schools and have any impact? I mean, ultimately they're going to come for Thomas Gilmore. If it's not at college, then it'll be in corporate America or somewhere else.
Right. Well, I think that the sheer numbers of people like Mr. Gilmore are quite small, but they can have an outsized effect on society, because as the liberal arts are forfeited, there is something that is insistent in human nature, that we want to know the truth, that we want to be able to think clearly, that a large majority of today's college students are kind of sidelined into triviality. It's not so much misinformation as information that doesn't matter that forms the bulk of what they learn in college. We end up with a society in which a kind of new elite will emerge, people who actually know how to think and have some substance to think about. That's at risk for sure, and it's not going to be great when our society has too few such people to step into positions of leadership, but they're not going to disappear entirely. So Mr. Gilmore has a future.
Well, we're on the clock. At least that's what Ilya Shapiro has to say. Ilya Shapiro, lawyer, and was supposed to have the Georgetown Law Center, as you know. In an interview he gave in the Journal, he talked about how dye could kill the country, not just dye in law schools could kill the country, not just the law schools, because, right, what the exhibition you saw at Stanford from those
so-called law students, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a generous description of what they are. They're professional bedwetters, and they're in training. But when you talk about diversity, and inclusion, equity at law schools, you're talking about undermining individual rights and equal treatment before the law, which we're seeing playing out in real time. And so, it seems like there needs to be a little bit more sense of urgency from those on the peaceful, pluralist, constitutional republic side of the equation to what is afoot in the university and everywhere else in American society.
Well, I feel that urgency too, but I've kind of given up on thinking that it's going to be the Stanfords, Harvards, and Yales that are going to lead us out of this valley of despair. They're going to have to be different institutions. Maybe they're minor-looking ones that don't have much reputation, like maybe Ave Maria is one of them, that are going to step into this, because we simply cannot do without the rule of law. Or if that's the case here, it really is just game over, and we head for our shelter in the hills and arm ourselves against the barbarians. I hope that's not where we are ending up going. I admit there are plenty of signals here that our country is headed in a very bad direction. Yet I have some faith, actually, that God and country will see us through this, and let's practice optimism in the face of the temptation to despair.
Now, you recently wrote an article on thespectator.com, How Real is America's Discontent? And you start out discussing Alvin Bragg. I didn't know his history, that you wrote in your piece that he grew up one angry man. Can you tell us why?
Well, he grew up in a section of Harlem called Strivers Row, and he imbibed early on the idea that this is a white oppressive society, that the black man never gets an even break, and his whole legal career has been aimed at essentially abolishing the rule of law over the black community. So as our head prosecutor in New York City, he's essentially refused to prosecute cases of felonies, short of just absolute mayhem. And we have gotten into this pattern of pleading felonies down to misdemeanors and then dismissing them. So he has created a genuine absence of rule of law in one of America's most important cities. And I live there, so I experience it every day. It's become a dangerous and increasingly dangerous place. This reflects one man's judgment of how the law should be twisted around to advance the DIE agenda.
Yeah, and we're still waiting to see what he's going to do with Trump. Grand jury pushed off another week. May have bitten off more than he can chew here, but I love that that attitude of, the black man or woman can't get a break in America, right? You're the elected Manhattan district attorney. Have you been introduced to Mayor Eric Adams? Have you been introduced to New York Attorney General Letitia James? I mean, that rap just seems, you would think, would get more and more tiresome given so many black men and women in high public office and the upper reaches of corporate America and everywhere else in America these days.
Right. So what happens, of course, is that street crime is primarily a black thing. If you live in New York, you know that. And if you live in Chicago, you know that. This is not hordes of Asians in the streets or Hispanics or whites committing these atrocities on a daily basis. I've witnessed it. I see purse snatchings and muggings. This is new to me. I've lived my life in the city for a very long time, but I've never just gone on a daily basis and seen a place where the cops turn their backs on everyday crime because they know there's nothing they can do. Once the justice system grinds to a halt, you end up with a kind of low-level, in some cases not so low-level anarchy. People get punched, mugged, pushed, thrown in front of the subways, goes on all the time. And we have the head of our justice system saying, so what? Not my affair.
Mm-hmm. One more question about the Academy before we let you go. Because I was having this conversation the other day with a buddy of mine and where his son is going to college and so forth. And it's like I was trying to decide between, Vanderbilt and Michigan. They're both good schools.
Those are good choices.
Well, this is the point. They're both good schools. They're hard to get into. And I said, I think we need to disabuse ourselves of the mentality that I had growing up too. Oh, Northwestern, where I went, it's a good school. It's hard to get into. Because a school is difficult to get into does not mean as it's a good school. And frankly, there are so few colleges and universities that have an appreciation for the humanities these days. There are very few good schools as far as I'm concerned. But specifically that notion that is inculcated into the minds of upwardly mobile families. Go to a good school, and the way to tell if it's a good school is if it's difficult to get into.
Well, you've put your finger on it. That is a problem. I am finding myself as someone who's devoted his life to higher education, advising people nowadays that don't go. There are better alternatives than sending your kids off to pricey schools where they will learn to hate their country and hate their family values. And it's pretty much what you get when you go into the selective liberal arts colleges, the major state universities, the private universities that have prestige as their calling card. If you look at what's actually taught, if you drill down into the curriculum, if you look at the campus life that is on offer, it's not a pretty picture. And parents have yet to awaken to that, at least not enough of them.
Peter Wood, President of the National Association of Scholars. Peter, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
We live in a high-tech world, yet nature is so complex that it's impossible for humans to even come close to duplicating it with all the technology in the world. Witness the spectacular things we